So a lot more details coming out about Battlefield 2042, not only with the customization you can actually do in-game with the weapon system, which I think is a really great quality of life, being able to make customizations and adjustments to your gameplay on the fly, but also we're getting more details about what the environment's going to be like, what the maps are going to be like, this climate apocalypse thing. Looks like it's going to be a really cool little, changing of the map and making it kind of feel unique every time you play a game. But one of the most intriguing things that to me, I find very interesting is this AI-controlled players that are going to be filling the lobbies if the lobbies are empty. Now, this is one thing that I've been talking about several times in a lot of different videos, where I would love to see this PvE, PvP type of gameplay in a lot more games, in a lot more first-person shooter games. To me personally, I feel like the more things you have to shoot at in first-person shooter game, the more fun you have, the more the game feels alive. And I'm going to talk about two examples, one of them being Titanfall 2 and the AI-controlled grunts, as well as specters and all these different types of AI-controlled elements in Titanfall 2 and its multiplayer. But also I want to talk about as well Star Wars Battlefront 2 introducing AI-controlled players in that game. Now, if you guys know, DICE was actually on development of Battlefront 2 in their development with this AI-controlled player, so now we're going to be seeing it introduced in Battlefront 2042. So it's a very interesting concept that they've done in one game that they're moving to another, and this is going to be a first for Battlefield and an online component. I mean, this is crazy to know that, for the longest time, Battlefield has just been PvP type content. Now they're introducing this way of being able to fill lobbies in a game, and this is the one thing, at least when it comes to video games, that at least on the online component has had a big issue when it comes to games that are dying, games that are having a hard time finding a match in certain multiplayer games. Titanfall 2 being a really good example where players are having a hard time, if they don't get DDoS, or having trouble trying to get into lobbies. It might take them a little bit longer to get into a lobby. However, when it comes to Battlefield 2042, introducing this AI component to the game, to where if slots are not being filled to get up to this 120 player on PC and Xbox Series X and PlayStation 5, well, AI controlled players are going to be filling those slots to get it up to 128. I think this is a great thing. I think this is a great going forward. Hopefully more games do this, because it actually allows the game to be a lot more alive for a lot longer. Like, you are able to play, if there's not a whole lot of people playing Battlefield 2042 later in the future, you know that the lobbies are going to be getting filled with AI controlled players, and I hope more games do this. I wish more games in the past did this, to where more games where you'd be able to play games that were older back in the day, being able to play their multiplayer because they had AI controlled players. You'd be able to fill lobbies and stuff like that. But I think this is a great thing moving forward, and I love to see that this is being introduced in 2042, and knowing that it's been done in the past with other DICE developed games. So I want to get into this story. I want to talk about it. I'm going to give my opinion again. I'm very into this idea of it. Again, I'm going to be talking about two games that have done this in the past that are controlled under EA. One developed by Respawn, which is Titanfall 2 with the AI grunts, but also with DICE's Battlefront 2 and introducing it in its game. So let's talk about this. I know there's a lot more gaming websites are kind of picking up on this, but Battlefield 2042 enlists AI soldiers to fight on the futuristic multiplayer front. So Battlefield 2042 has been announced and shown off through gaming engine and gaming footage during the past week. More recently, EA has performed its first Battlefield briefing, which has given a closer look at the upcoming game. In that briefing, which is recently updated, we have found out that Battlefield 2042 will be introducing an artificial intelligence soldiers to the series. One of the most frustrating things about games when it's played, but the player base is not what it once was. Sometimes all you can find are empty servers, which can also prove to be very disappointing. And this is what I said. If games back in the day, I wish that had it, you wouldn't have these dead games. You'd have it filled by AI controlled players to where you'd be able to get into lobbies and be able to play these games. However, Battlefield 2042 is bringing AI soldiers to the battlefield to fill up these empty slots to combat this problem. I think this is a great idea. I think it's great to know that this is something that's going to be keeping this game alive for a long, long time, and I'm hoping this is introduced more into other games in the future. So AI will also be used in co-op matches, which allows you to play together with friends against AI soldiers. Furthermore, you can also face off against AI in solo modes to perfect your skills for multiplayer. All of this will make it so no matter how you play the game, multiplayer or by yourself or co-op or whatnot, there will always be something for you to fight. Hopefully EA will give this a deeper dive into AI soon, as its implementation can be interesting. perhaps the AI will be able to learn from its mistakes as well as other players and allow. And this is actually, you know what? We'll end this and we'll get into the other games. But this is actually one interesting thing to think about, is that the AI players, the AI, AI controlled players, are going to be learning a lot from not only player behavior, but also kind of their own behavior and being able to correct exactly what they can do. And the funny thing is, and I thought about this too when reading this and kind of looking this up, if you've ever played Call of Duty and you played against bots in that game, like on professional, dude, you're gonna get a foot in your ass when you play against bots in Call of Duty on professional. But man, yeah, I'm very intrigued by this idea, because this is going to be keeping the game alive, whether you're playing multiplayer, whether you're playing co-op or playing by yourself. And also the game doesn't, from what I understand, Battlefield 2042 is not going to have a single player campaign. So again, this is actually just adding in another thing to allow players to play it by themselves if they choose to, or do co-op and whatnot on these vast maps. So again, a very interesting idea that I'd love to see implemented in games, hopefully moving forward. But let's talk about this. So 2 games, like I said in particular, have been something that have added this AI controlled player type of thing in games, where Titanfall 2 was one of the, I feel like one of the first games in the genre of first person shooters, or I guess Titanfall 1, where it had AI controlled elements, where you had grunts and you had AI controlled Titans in the game, to where it felt like a lot more stuff was going on. It felt like a lot more stuff was happening. It felt like the game was more involved, and it made you feel like there was a lot more things to do. If there weren't any players to shoot at, you could shoot the grunts, you could shoot the Titans, and I love that they were able to take that idea in Titanfall 1 and move it over to Titanfall 2, to where they were able to implement more things: Spectres, Stalkers, Reapers, and it looked like the AI was more advanced from the first game, to where they had their own different types of characteristics, their own dialogue, that they would talk amongst each other about what was going on or what was happening. And I love that Respawn was able to do that. And I guess going forward from that, I'm assuming, at least when it comes to what Respawn was able to do, and them being under the umbrella of right now of EA, maybe some of the ideas that they had with that game, with dialogue and different actions that AI took in Titanfall 2, is going to be migrating over to Battlefield 2042. However, the one thing that DICE was able to do, at least when it comes to AI-controlled players, was actually introduce it into Battlefront 2 back in the day, back in 2019. Back in the day, 2019, just a couple of years ago. But that was with the introduction of Capital Supremacy. So this was an introduction of the Clone Wars into Battlefront 2, and this was a huge milestone from what they were talking about when it comes to introducing a brand new AI technology to the game, to where they were saying, for the first time in Star Wars Battlefront 2, the online multiplayer, players battling alongside and against bots, another word for an AI-controlled unit. The AI provided scale to the combat by increasing the sheer number of troopers on the battlefront, but is also enabling players across the entire skill spectrum to have a good time, as the bots are, if compared to seasoned veterans, easier targets. And I'll be honest, like at least in Battlefront 2, yeah, they are pretty easy targets. However, if you're not a seasoned veteran when it comes to playing that game, the AI is not a pushover by any means. They definitely are accurate. They definitely take a little bit more of kind of targeting and whatnot. But I loved that they added this in here as saying that, yes, it provided scale. It provided more things to do, more things to shoot, more interactive. It felt like the game had a lot more stuff going on, and it felt like a really great way of building up a humongous battlefield. Especially if you guys have ever played or watched the Clone Wars and whatnot, you know the vast scales of these battles. And DICE was able to perfect and work on this idea of having AI-controlled enemies or allies, depending what side you're on, of being able to make these maps bigger, make them more filled, make them more scaled in intensity, I guess, when it comes to being able to play the game, and a lot more stuff going on. This is great. I think this is such a great idea that they were able to implement in Battlefront 2, and DICE took this idea and is moving it over to Battlefield 2042. And what they are teasing with this, from a large-scale 128-player Battlefield, 64 v 64, is something that's going to be really crazy to see, with the vast scale of the maps, with the different environments that they're going to be able to put up, with these climate apocalypse types of things. But also, too, with making the game feel like there's just so much more going on. The scale of what I feel like are going to be able to do with this AI controlled players and being able to fill these lobbies is something that, when it comes to other Battlefield games, when you're looking for servers, you're looking on Battlefield 4 and you're trying to find a server, you always try to go for the server that's most filled. Like that is, at least for me, that's what I would do. I would go to and try to find the server that was most full, just because that means there's a lot more players to play, there's a lot more things going on. You never look for a server that was empty or close to empty. With this, it's going to be allowing more people to get involved, and the hunt for a full server, unless you're looking for more servers filled by more, you know, actual players instead of these AI, is something that's going to be not that big of a deal. Like, to me, I'm not going to be focused on looking at server numbers and seeing, okay, it's not, okay, maybe it's 72 out of 128. Okay, you know, I'll look for maybe a map that, or a server that's 121 out of 128 and stuff like that. That won't be the biggest focus for me now, just because they're adding in AI players to actually fill in the slots, fill in the empty slots to do this. I think it's great. I think it's a great idea. I want to see this implemented in I want to see how it works in 2042. I want to see it, if it's able to work out as well as it did in Battlefront 2, I want to see it implemented in more games. I feel like the longevity of Battlefront 2042, if this AI controlled players are able to be implemented very well, fill in these slots, make it feel more I guess fulfilled when it comes to having a lot more things to shoot and a lot more things to do, and make it look more chaotic as a true Battlefield. I think it's gonna be a great thing, and I think I want to see it more implemented in more games, and it's gonna make this game last a lot longer. And I wonder if more EA DICE type of games, if they're gonna be making, you know, a bit more Battlefront games or Titanfall games and stuff like that, is this something they're gonna be implementing it later in the future to where the games feel a lot more alive and a lot more things are going on because there's a lot more things to interact with. So anyway, just wanted to talk about it. I think it's a great thing. I think it's going to be looking really cool if this is implemented well. But yeah, man, just wanted to push out my idea, talk about it, and kind of get your guys' opinion about it. So what do you guys think about AI controlled players being introduced in Battlefront 2042, being able to fill lobbies and being able to kind of do exactly what other players are able to do, real life players? So let me know in the comments below. I hope you guys have a great rest of the day, and I look forward to talking to you guys all next time.